All right, let's get right into it. For decades, the whole conversation about ADHD has been about one thing: how to fix the person. But what if that's the wrong question entirely? Today, we're going to flip that script. We're going to talk about a much bigger idea. How do we change the world around the ADHD brain instead of trying to change the brain itself?
This quote right here from Jessica McCabe's mother, this is everything. It's the key to this whole explainer. She was faced with a barrier, and she didn't see herself as the problem. She saw a simple, environmental fix. It's the perfect metaphor, right? Sometimes the best solution isn't to change the person, it's just to put some carpet down.
And that really gets to the heart of the issue, doesn't it? Our world, a lot of the time, is built for one very specific kind of brain. It assumes there's a single, right way to do things. And for neurodivergent minds, that just creates this constant mismatch, turning everyday tasks into these huge, exhausting battles.
Now take a look at this. I bet this feels super familiar. These are your standard kindergarten rules. But think about it. For an ADHD brain, this is basically a recipe for disaster. Moving, fidgeting, even looking away, those aren't signs that someone isn't listening. In fact, they're often what someone needs to do to focus. So environments with rules like these, they don't just misunderstand. They actually punish the very behaviors that help people with ADHD succeed.
And here's the thing. It's not for a lack of trying. People with ADHD often have hundreds of tools, apps, strategies, you name it, just to navigate the day. The issue isn't a lack of solutions. The real problem is that our environments, our schools and workplaces, make it so hard, and sometimes even shameful, to actually use those tools.
So, what's the answer? Well, we need a new blueprint, a totally new way of thinking about how we build our world. And that's where something called universal design comes in.
Universal design sounds kind of academic, but the idea is actually super simple. It's not about tacking on fixes later. It's about building inclusivity right in from the start. Think of a ramp next to a flight of stairs. Yeah, it's absolutely essential for someone in a wheelchair, but it also helps a parent pushing a stroller, a delivery person with a cart, or you when you sprain your ankle. When we design for the edges, we almost always make things better for everyone.
And this, right here, this is the whole game. This is the big shift we have to make. The old goal, the broken one, was to try and make people with ADHD act neurotypical, to just fit in. The new goal, the better goal, is to create spaces where their amazing, unique brains can actually succeed and thrive.
So how do we actually do this? How do we put it into practice? Okay, let's break it down into 3 really big, high-impact shifts. And if you're a leader, a teacher, an HR professional, listen up. These are your tools. This is how you become an architect of change. We're going to focus on 3 main areas: the physical spaces we're in, the way we communicate with each other, and the tools we all use day to day.
First up, flexible environments. Now, this isn't about lowering standards or slacking off. It's about enabling people to do their best work. Flexible start times, a total game changer for people with different sleep cycles. Being able to work from home or even just move to a quieter room can slash distractions. These aren't special treatment. They're smart, strategic adjustments that boost productivity for so many people.
Second, let's talk about how we talk to each other. Tiny changes here can have a massive impact, like framing things in the positive. Instead of, "Don't forget to do this," which sounds kind of like an accusation, try, "Hey, can you help me remember to do this?" It just shifts the whole tone from criticism to collaboration. Even something as small as a hand gesture matters. That palm up motion is so much more inviting than pointing a finger, which can feel really confrontational. Little things, big difference.
And finally, tools. Just imagine for a second, what if the things that help people with ADHD were just there for everyone? What if every company gave out Bluetooth trackers for keys and badges as standard issue? When we make these tools a normal feature instead of a special accommodation, we just completely remove the stigma. It lets people manage their own needs without having to ask for permission, and let's be real, who wouldn't benefit from a little extra help?
Okay, so this all sounds great in theory, but what does it actually look like in the real world? Let's check out a couple of really powerful stories that show exactly how this works. So this is Ron, and Ron absolutely hates raking leaves. But you know what he loves? His riding lawnmower. So instead of fighting his own brain, forcing himself to do this task he despises, he just found a way to use a tool he actually enjoys. He's working with his brain, not against it. Sure, the neighbors might think it's weird, but who cares? It gets the job done, it's fast, and it's even fun. That is a huge win.
And this example from Jessica McKay is just fantastic. Her signature video style, with the fast pace and the jump cuts, that wasn't some grand artistic choice at first. It was a coping mechanism. She struggled to memorize long scripts, so she edited that way to make it work. But that accommodation, the thing she did to cope with the challenge, became her signature style, one that made her videos way more engaging and accessible for her audience. Her flaw became a universal strength.
So the big takeaway here is that you don't have to be a CEO or a school principal to make a real difference. Every single one of us has the power to lay a brick to start building a world that's just more inclusive and more accessible for everyone.
So I want to leave you with a direct question, not for someday, but for right now. What is one small, concrete change you can push for in your workplace, your classroom, or just in your family this week? Maybe it's asking for meeting agendas to be sent out ahead of time. Maybe it's just normalizing the use of fidget tools. Think small, but start now.
And let's end on this thought. When you're learning to ride a motorcycle, they teach you something really important. Look where you want to go, not at the ground or the obstacles, because your body will naturally follow your eyes. And it's the exact same for creating change. Instead of getting bogged down focusing on all the problems, let's fix our gaze on the world we want to build. A world that's flexible, that's understanding, and that's truly designed for every single kind of brain.
Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're doing something a little different. We're not really talking about managing ADHD. We're talking to the people on the other side of it. The partners, the parents, the siblings, the friends. The ones who love, support, and stand by someone with ADHD. Yeah, this one's for you.
And that quote? It's pretty much the whole idea behind this explainer. We're going to focus on a group of people that author Jessica McCabe calls hearts. These are the folks who are brought into the world of ADHD not because they have it, but because they love someone who does. So if you're trying to figure out how to connect, how to help, or just how to get through the day with someone you love who has ADHD, then you're in exactly the right place. You are a heart. And before we get into any of the how-tos, we just have to start by saying thank you for your patience when you're totally running on empty, for your love, and for all the effort you put in that nobody else sees. It really, truly matters more than you can possibly know.
Okay, so let's dive into the big one, that question that just echoes in so many relationships. Why can't they just remember the one thing I asked them to do? To really understand that painful gap between what they mean to do and what actually happens, we have to go inside the ADHD brain.
This right here, this is what some experts call a double empathy problem. From your side, a forgotten promise feels personal. It feels like a lack of care. But on their side, it's this brutal internal cycle. They genuinely wanted to do the thing, but their brain just let the thought slip away. And the second they realize it, they're hit with this tidal wave of shame. It's not about not caring. It's about a brain that is wired differently.
And that's a totally fair question. So let's break down the hidden mental gymnastics that go into a task that seems so simple on the surface, like, say, buy flowers on the way home.
So what this shows us, and this is so important, is that one simple request is actually a super complex project. It demands all these different executive functions to work together perfectly. And for an ADHD brain, a lot of these are impaired. The main point is this: you can't try harder to fix a wiring issue any more than you could try harder to see without your glasses. It just doesn't work that way. Okay, so knowing all that, how can you offer support that actually helps without accidentally triggering that shame spiral we just talked about? Let's get into the practical stuff, your toolbox. These 4 things can shift everything from a potential conflict to a real collaboration. When you ask what they need, you might find out they just want you to sit with them while they do a boring task that's called body doubling. Or normalizing their process could just mean helping them set up a system that works for their brain, not yours. And then celebrating even the smallest wins along the way. And this quote, wow, it is just the perfect example of that first rule. Ask, don't assume. Colleen figured out what was triggering her, and she asked for a tiny, specific change. An open palm isn't really about the flowers or the chores. It's about creating a feeling of safety instead of accusation. That one small shift can stop a whole emotional shutdown before it even starts. Okay, let's pause for a second, because this next part is absolutely crucial. Your support is vital, but it cannot come at the expense of your own mental and emotional health. For love to be sustainable, your energy has to be sustainable too. So let's talk about boundaries. Look, here's the thing. Your most important job is to be their partner.
their parent, their friend. When you slip into being their full-time ADHD coach, you risk damaging that primary relationship you have. Your role is to support them in building their own team of professionals, of tools, of systems, not to be the entire team yourself. This is a total game changer for so many couples and families. Just forget about trying to split everything perfectly 50-50. A lot of the time, that's just a recipe for resentment. Instead, aim for equity. The goal isn't a perfectly balanced chore chart. The goal is that everyone gets to the end of the day with enough energy left for themselves and for each other. And that brings us to the final and honestly the most important points of all. Never, ever, ever underestimate the power that you have in this relationship. You are not just a bystander watching their ADHD happen. Every single time you choose to ask a question instead of making an assumption, every time you offer empathy instead of frustration, you are fundamentally changing their world. You're shifting their environment from a hostile one to a safe one. You're creating the space where they can actually grow and thrive. So that's the question to take with you. This isn't about working harder or trying to fix them. It's about loving smarter. By leading with your heart and just a little bit of understanding, you become the single most powerful, positive force in their life. You really are the difference maker. Welcome, everyone. In this explainer, we're digging into why ADHD is so incredibly hard. And here's the thing. It's often not just about the ADHD itself. It's about all the extra weights that get piled on top. Things like systemic barriers, social pressures, and this deep internalized shame. These things stack up and make what's already a tough situation feel, well, almost impossible. Wow, this quote from Jessica McCabe it really hits you, right? It perfectly captures this core struggle. It's about that exhausting performance of trying to be the person everyone expects you to be when you're out in the world. But the second you get home, you just collapse. You become your real struggling self again. It's this constant draining effort. So let's dive into this first part, a life of failing. For so many people with ADHD, especially when it's undiagnosed, life can feel like you're just constantly failing. And not at the big stuff, but at the everyday basics. You know, this feeling of failing to be the person I was supposed to be, it starts early. When you're a kid, maybe it's always having your backpack unzipped or constantly forgetting your coat. Then you grow up, and it turns into struggling to pay bills on time, or being late for work, or even just remembering to put gas in the car. It's this constant, nagging feeling that you can't handle the simple things that everyone else seems to do without even thinking about it. Okay, so let's get into the next piece, the baseline challenge. And this is so important. We have to understand that this feeling of failure, it's not a moral issue. It is absolutely not a character flaw. It comes from a neurological reality. This is the starting point, the baseline challenge, before anything else gets piled on. And at the heart of that challenge is something called executive function. You can think of it like the CEO of your brain, you know? It's the system that's supposed to handle all the management stuff, organizing, planning, remembering things, managing your time. Well, for people with ADHD, that management system is working differently. That's the baseline. That's the starting point. And here's what that actually looks like day to day. A lot of people think ADHD is just about not being able to focus, but it is so much more than that. We're talking about working memory, just trying to hold information in your head. Set shifting, which is just a fancy way of saying switching from one task to another. Response inhibition, controlling your impulses. And of course, regulating your attention and your emotions. This is the invisible backpack that someone with ADHD is carrying from the moment they wake up. All right, now for the main event, making ADHD harder. Because here's the thing, and this is really the whole point. ADHD almost never happens in a vacuum. Life just loves to stack extra weights on top of that baseline challenge. And they are heavy. So let's break down what these weights actually are. We're going to call these things load adders. It's a great term for them. They're all those extra pressures, both from the outside world and from inside your own head, that take the core challenges of ADHD and just amplify them, making everything feel so much harder to manage. So we can pretty much break these load adders down into 4 big categories. First, not having a diagnosis or the right tools. Second, the systemic barriers that are just built into the world around us. Third, all that pressure from society and other people. And finally, the internalized shame and trauma that comes from all of it. Let's walk through them one by one. So that first load adder, not having a diagnosis. Just think about that for a second. Imagine going through decades of your life,
thinking you're just lazy or irresponsible or just broken. This quote says it all. You spend all that time blaming yourself for being late or messy or bad with money, and you have no idea that these are all symptoms of a condition you've had for years. That self-blame, that is a ridiculously heavy weight. Okay, next up is a huge systemic barrier, and it's called the ADHD tax. And this is a very real thing. It's the extra money you end up spending because of executive function struggles. I'm talking about late fees because you forgot to pay a bill, having to buy something again because you lost it, paying for rush shipping because you left things to the last minute, or all that food you bought with good intentions that just rots in the fridge. It all adds up, creating this constant financial stress, which of course just makes everything else even harder. And these systemic barriers, man, they go even deeper. This quote here really gets to the heart of it. Because of things like medical racism, Black people and other people of color are way less likely to get a proper diagnosis and treatment. They get dismissed. Their symptoms are misinterpreted. The same thing happens with girls and women because of sexism and just a total misunderstanding of how ADHD can present in them. You add that to unsupportive schools and flexible jobs, and you've got these massive institutional walls blocking people from getting the help they desperately need. Let's talk about the next big weight, societal pressure. So the world basically has this one set of expectations, right? Be organized, be on time, don't be too emotional, just calm down. But the reality for someone with ADHD is a constant, daily battle with their own brain just to try and meet those standards. When you're constantly told to just try harder in a world not built for you, it creates this huge, painful gap between who you're supposed to be and who you are. And that gap, it's where shame just grows and grows. So you can see how it all piles up, right? You've got the lack of a diagnosis, the financial tax, the systemic racism and sexism, the constant societal pressure. All of it leads to this deep, internalized shame. And what it all means is this: it is not a level playing field. It's just not. We cannot expect the same results from people when they are carrying completely different burdens. Okay, but what happens when a weight is lifted? What if we could take away just one of those heavy burdens? What happens when someone finally gets a diagnosis or the right support or even just a little bit of understanding? Well, the change can be absolutely life-altering. Think about this freeze right here. It really captures that before picture. All of that effort a person was already putting in, trying so hard, pushing against a wall, and just feeling like they're getting absolutely nowhere. The effort is there. It's always been there. But it's just being crushed by the sheer weight of everything else. And then you remove a weight, and that exact same effort, suddenly it works. See, getting a diagnosis gives you a framework. It gives you understanding. The right support or medication can help that CEO of the brain do its job a little better. The key thing here is that support doesn't create willpower. It unlocks the effort that was trapped there the whole time. It lets it finally connect with results. And that really is the whole key, isn't it? Support doesn't cure ADHD. It's not about fixing someone. It's about making the total load manageable. It's about taking off some of those extra, unfair weights so that a person can finally just deal with their own baseline backpack and start moving forward with their life. So, where does this all leave us? We're at the final section, the power of belief. And this might be the most important takeaway of all. It's not about a fancy new strategy or a pill. It's about something much more fundamental. Just let that sink in for a moment. This quote is heartbreaking because it's so true for so many. When you really see all the invisible obstacles someone is up against, all that self-blame they carried for years just feels tragic. All that shame came from one simple thing, not understanding the true nature of the struggle. It really shows you the human cost of not seeing the whole picture. So, knowing all of this now, what's the single most helpful thing you can do? If you're a teacher, a doctor, a parent, a partner, if you care about someone with ADHD, what is the one thing that can actually help lift some of this weight? It's this. It's this simple. Believe people when they say it's hard. Just believe them. When someone tells you they are struggling, that something is difficult for them, your first job is to believe them. That act of validation, of just acknowledging their reality, might be the single most powerful load remover of all. It's the antidote to a lifetime of being told it's all in their head or that they're just not trying hard enough. And in the end, that's what changes everything. Because when you truly understand the full weight that someone is carrying, that baseline challenge plus all those load adders we talked about, you just stop asking, why can't you just move faster?
You stop judging their pace entirely, and instead, you start asking a much better question. How can I help lighten your load? All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to talk about something that gets so many of us, that feeling of having a totally forgetful brain. Using some amazing insights from Jessica McCabe's book, How to ADHD, we're going to put together a super simple toolkit to deal with it. So, let's just start with this scene right here from the author. I mean, you can feel that slow motion horror, can't you? That sinking feeling in your stomach. You did all the hard work, you showed up, and then you're taken down by one tiny forgotten thing, the charger. Oh, I'm sure it does. Who hasn't been there? Maybe for you it wasn't a charger, maybe it was your keys, your wallet, that one super important piece of paper you needed for a meeting, or the classic, the one single thing you actually went to the grocery store to buy. It's that same feeling that, how could I forget that? So why does this keep happening? To figure that out, we've got to look at what's going on inside our heads. And I promise you, the cause isn't that you're lazy or that you don't care. It's all about a part of your brain called your working memory. Okay, here's the best way to think about it. Imagine you've got a little sticky note, right, on your forehead. It's not for big ideas or long-term memories. It's just for what you need to know, like right now. That little mental sticky note is supposed to be holding things like, hey, grab the charger before you leave, or don't forget milk on the way home, or call mom back at 4. It's just a temporary little space for all your immediate tasks. And this is the whole problem, right? For a lot of us, especially if you have challenges with executive function, that mental sticky note just isn't very sticky at all. The tiniest little breeze, a new thought, a distraction, a text message can just blow it right off. And poof, that information is just gone. Now, let's look at the official definition here, because there's a key word. It's not just about holding information, it's about manipulating it. That's why trying to run through your mental grocery list while also figuring out the fastest way to get to the store is a recipe for disaster. You end up forgetting the milk and your exit. And this quote just nails that cycle of frustration, doesn't it? We try to fix the problem by creating these beautiful new systems, a fancy planner, a complicated app, the whole color-coded shebang. But these systems still depend on our faulty internal sticky note to remember to even use them. So of course they fail. So if we can't make our internal sticky note any stickier, what do? We stop trying to. The goal isn't to fix your internal memory. The real solution is to build an external one, something you can actually see and touch, something that's reliable and permanent. Okay, so let's get into the how-to. This is what the book calls the One Capture Toolkit. We're going to build a simple, super effective external brain that does all the remembering for you. It really all comes down to these 4 simple ideas you see here. We're going to have one spot for everything, use our environment to help us out, keep things ridiculously simple, and then automate everything we possibly can. So let's jump in with the first tool. This one is the foundation. It's the big one. We're not talking about 5 different notebooks for 5 different things, not a random collection of sticky notes and phone reminders and notes in a document. No, you need to pick one trusted place, a physical notebook or a single app, and you make a deal with yourself that everything goes in there. Every idea, every to-do, every single reminder. All right, next up, use your eyes. This is all about making your physical space do the remembering for you. So don't hide your keys in a drawer. Put them in a big, obvious bowl right by the door. That spot becomes your launch pad. Your wallet, your phone, the library book you got to return, it all goes on the launch pad right in your line of sight so you physically cannot miss it on your way out. And you know what? This doesn't have to be some boring chore. Your external brain can actually be fun. If you make your systems cool and personal, like this Doctor Who key holder, you're basically giving yourself a little dopamine hit every time you use it. And that makes the habit way more likely to stick. So this tool is absolutely crucial. Keep it simple. That fancy, perfectly color-coded filing system might feel amazing to set up, but think about maintaining it on a day when you have 0 energy. No way. Simple is always better. A label maker is about to become your new best friend. Just a simple label on a drawer that says cables. A basic checklist for leaving the house. Keys, wallet, phone. Simple systems work because they take almost 0 brain power to use.
And finally, let technology do the heavy lifting for you. Outsource everything you can. Your brain shouldn't have to remember to take the trash out on Tuesday night. Set a recurring alarm for that. It shouldn't have to remember a dentist appointment 6 months from now. The second you make it, put it in your digital calendar with like 3 different alerts. Let your phone be the nagging voice so your brain can just relax. Now that we have the tools, we have to talk about the most important part of all of this, your mindset. Because honestly, all the tools in the world won't make a difference if you're still beating yourself up every time you forget something. Just let that one sink in for a second. Read it again. This is the whole message. You are not bad at remembering. You're asking a brain with a tiny, not very sticky note on it to hold a truly impossible amount of information in a world that is designed to distract you. It's a capacity issue, not a character issue. Forgetting things doesn't make you lazy or uncaring or dumb. It just makes you a person whose brain is wired in a particular way. And when you really get that it's about neurology, you can finally start to let go of all the shame that comes with being forgetful. And that's really the whole point, isn't it? All of these tools we talked about, they're all about accepting how your brain actually works and then building a world around it that supports it, instead of constantly trying to force your brain to be something that it's not. It's about self-compassion, not self-correction. So let's end with an action. Go grab that one notebook or open that one app you picked to be your central capture point. What is the very first thing, that annoying to do, that great idea, that thing you keep telling yourself, don't forget, don't forget? What's the first thing you're going to put into your brand new external brain? Go do it right now.
Have you ever felt like your emotions are just too much? You know, like a wave that comes on way too fast, hits way too hard, and leaves you feeling completely exhausted and, honestly, kind of ashamed? Well, if you have ADHD, that feeling is probably a core part of your life. So today, we're going to unpack the science behind these super intense emotions and talk about a real, practical toolkit to help you navigate them. Let's start with where that feeling of being too much so often begins.
Yeah, this quote from Jessica McCabe's book, How to ADHD. It probably feels pretty familiar to a lot of you. It's that exact moment where you learn to believe that your feelings are the problem, that you are the problem.
And, it just keeps going into adulthood with phrases like these. We're told to regulate, to manage, to basically just stop feeling what we're feeling. It sends this incredibly powerful message: your emotions are not welcome here. And so over time, we learn to hide them or fight them or just feel really, really ashamed of them.
But hang on. Let's just pause and ask a really important question here. What if this emotional intensity, this reactivity, isn't some kind of moral failing or a lack of self-control? What if it's just a core neurological trait of your ADHD brain? Okay, this is where things get really interesting. Because when we can shift from blaming ourselves to understanding the biology, we can start to work with our brains instead of constantly fighting against them. So let's get into the science.
The key term we need to know is emotion dysregulation. And listen, this is not just a fancy way of saying moody. It is a core neurological challenge for ADHD brains. It means rejection can feel absolutely catastrophic. Frustration can turn into rage in a split second. And joy can be like stratospheric. This isn't a choice. It's just a difference in how the brain is wired.
So a huge first step in navigating all of this is understanding the difference between a feeling and a thought. Feelings are simple physical experiences: sad, angry, happy, one word. Thoughts, on the other hand, are the stories our brain tells about those feelings. I'm sad because I'm a total failure, or I'm angry because everyone is out to get me. See how thoughts often come disguised as feelings? I feel like everyone hates me isn't actually a feeling. It's a thought, and separating the two, it's a total game changer.
So, if our brains are wired for these big emotions, are we just stuck with them? Are we doomed to be on this roller coaster forever? Absolutely not. It just means we need a different kind of toolkit. So let's get super practical and walk through some ADHD-friendly strategies you can actually start using today.
All right, here's our roadmap. Now, this isn't some rigid, step-by-step process you have to follow perfectly every single time. Think of it more like a menu of options. We're going to start with labeling the intensity. Then we'll talk about the power of hitting pause, what it means to actually sit with a feeling, how to explore it, and finally how to use it as a guide. The goal here isn't to get rid of the emotion, it's to understand what it's trying to tell you.
Okay, first up, when a big emotion hits, don't even worry about finding the perfect word for it. Seriously, that's hard, especially when you're in the thick of it. Instead, just label its intensity.
Is this a low-level green feeling, a rising yellow alert, or is this a full-blown code red emergency? Using a 1 to 10 scale also works great. This simple little act creates a tiny bit of space between you and the emotion. And that space, that's the first step toward regulation.
Now, this next step, this might be the hardest one of all, but it is so crucial. Pause. Just wait. Our instinct, especially with intense feelings, is to do something right now. Fire off that angry email, make some dramatic exit, try to fix the whole situation. But reacting in the heat of the moment, it almost always makes things worse. The goal here is just to create a little buffer, a pause, to let that initial wave crash without you acting on it.
So why is that pause so powerful? Well, here's a surprising little fact. The pure physiological response of an intense emotion, I'm talking the racing heart, the adrenaline, all of it, your body typically can't sustain that for longer than about 20 minutes. It has a natural peak and then a natural decline. Now, I know, for a brain that struggles with time, those 20 minutes can feel like an absolute eternity. But just knowing there's a biological finish line can be a huge anchor. You're not signing up for forever. You're just waiting out a 20-minute chemical wave.
Okay, so once that initial intensity fades, from say a 10 down to a more manageable 6 or 7, you can start to explore. And this isn't about judging the feeling or trying to fix it, it's just about getting it out of your head. Write it down, totally unfiltered. Draw it, paint it, talk it out with a friend you trust. Then listen, because emotions aren't the enemy, they're data. Anger might be telling you a boundary was just crossed. Sadness might be telling you a need isn't being met. Your feelings are a compass, and they're pointing you toward what you truly need.
Using these tools isn't just about managing crises. Over time, it leads to this really fundamental shift in how you relate to yourself. It's a move away from fighting your emotions to, finally, welcoming them home.
So many of us have internalized messages just like this one. We learn to put our feelings into these little boxes, the good ones and the bad ones. We see anger as dangerous, something that has to be shut down at all costs. The author talks about how this belief left her totally terrified of her own internal world.
And then a therapist asks this question, and it's such a powerful pattern interrupt. It just completely challenges that all-or-nothing thinking. It suggests that emotions exist on a whole spectrum. I mean, sure, maybe a 10 is destructive, but what about a 3? What about the kind of anger that just tells you, hey, that wasn't fair? What if that kind of anger is actually a healthy, protective signal?
And that's the crucial point right there. Your feelings are not your character. They are not moral judgments. They are simply information. Every single one of them is a valid signal from your nervous system trying to tell you something important about your world and your needs.
So, what's the big takeaway from all of this? Your feelings, no matter how intense they get, they are temporary. They can't last forever. They will pass. And maybe most importantly, after a whole lifetime of being told the opposite, I want you to know this. You are allowed to feel them, all of them. Your big feelings are welcome here.
Okay, so let's get right into it. If you have ADHD, you know that the whole social world, it can feel like you're playing a video game on the hardest difficulty, but you never got the instruction manual, right? It's honestly one of the toughest, most painful things to manage. But what if I told you there's a totally different way to approach it? And this quote right here, it nails the central problem, doesn't it? The very same brain wiring that lets you pull an all-nighter and finish a huge project, well, that system is a complete disaster when you try to apply it to people. You can't just ignore a friendship for a month and then try to hyper-focus your way back in. It doesn't work. And the results of that mismatch, man, they feel awful. It looks a lot like this, right? Interrupting someone because this brilliant thought just popped into your head and you know it'll be gone in 5 seconds if you don't say it now. Or completely zoning out while a friend is talking to you. It's that phone full of texts you never replied to. It's apologizing, again, for being late. And it's that horrible sinking feeling when you realize you missed another birthday. All of it just builds up until you feel like you must be a really bad friend. Which leads you to this question. You look around, you see other people making it look so easy, and you just think, what is wrong with me? Am I just rude? Am I a selfish person? And that is such a heavy, heavy thing to carry around. But the answer to this question, well, it changes everything. So let's start reframing this. When your friend thinks you're being rude because you interrupted them, that's not what's really going on. What's happening in your brain is a genuine struggle with something called response inhibition. Think of it like faulty brakes on your impulse to speak.
You're not trying to be rude, you're just having a hard time stopping that thought before it flies out of your mouth. And it's the same thing with forgetting a birthday. To them, it feels personal, like a clear sign that you just don't care. But the reality is a challenge with what's called working memory. Your brain has a really tough time holding on to information that isn't, a 5-alarm fire right now. It's not that their birthday isn't important to you. It's that your brain's filing system is just a little chaotic. Oh, and this one's a big one. Being late all the time feels like the ultimate act of disrespect to the person waiting for you. But the reality is a very real thing called time blindness. It's an impaired sense of time passing. You can genuinely, truly believe you have a solid 20 minutes to get ready, when in reality you only have 5. It has nothing to do with how much you value your friend or their time. So here's the absolute most important takeaway. All of these social struggles, they are not moral failings. They are not proof that you're a bad person. They are symptoms of a brain difference. It's about wiring, not character. And just letting that simple fact sink in, that's the real first step. Okay, so once we stop blaming our character, we can finally move from the why to the how. We can stop trying to force our brains to be something they're not, and instead we can start building a social toolbox with strategies that actually work with our brains. So tool number 1, externalize everything. Your working memory is not a reliable hard drive, so stop trying to use it like one. Get all that important stuff out of your head and into the real world. That means a calendar is your new best friend, and not just for appointments. Set people reminders to just check in with a friend. And I love this idea of a launch pad, a little spot right by your front door where you put anything you can't forget, like a birthday card or a gift. You literally have to trip over it to leave the house. And this quote from Tony is a perfect example of this in action. He's not telling his wife he doesn't listen, he's explaining how his brain works. So the shared calendar becomes this neutral, reliable tool in their relationship. It's not about who's right or who forgot, it's just, is it on the calendar? All right, tool number 2, find your people. This is huge. Instead of exhausting yourself trying to pretend you're someone you're not, focus your energy on finding friends who get it. Look for people who value things like kindness and honesty, not just people who like the same movies as you. A lot of the time, other neurodivergent people are a great fit because there's just this built-in understanding. They're way less likely to get offended if you're 10 minutes late. Now, these systems and finding the right friends, these are total game changers. But they both lead up to the final and honestly the most powerful tool of all. It's the one that can feel the most difficult, but I promise you it's the most freeing. So what is it? What's the single most effective thing you can do for your friendships? It's this. That's it. You just ask for what you need. Instead of trying to hide all your struggles and hoping nobody notices them, you actually invite your friends to help you. And look how simple and easy that can sound. It's not this big, heavy confession. It's just a small, practical request. You're not saying I'm unreliable. You're saying, I am so excited to see you, and here is a little thing that will make sure it happens. You're showing them how to be a good friend to you. This skill has a name. It's called self-advocacy, and I absolutely love this way of thinking about it. It's not making excuses, it's giving your friends an instruction manual for you. You're handing them the cheat codes to have a great, successful friendship with you. So I want to leave you with this question. Just think about it for a second. It doesn't have to be some grand announcement to everyone you know, but who is one person in your life that you could be a little more honest with this week? Who could you share one little page from your instruction manual with? Because that right there, that's how you start building better, stronger, and happier friendships. Not by changing who you are, but by finally learning how to ask for what you need.
Have you ever just stared at a pile of dishes and felt like you were looking at Mount Everest? Or, you promise yourself, today's the day I'm going to clean out my inbox, but an hour later, you're just scrolling on your phone. Yeah, if that sounds familiar, then you are absolutely in the right place. Today, we're going to talk about the brain's management system, its executive function, and why just try harder is, well, some of the worst advice you can possibly get.
And this quote from Jessica McCabe's book, How to ADHD, man, it just hits so hard, right? It perfectly captures that feeling. You start the day with this image of the person you're supposed to be. You're organized, you're on top of everything. But by the time you get home, you're just you, a little worn out, a little scattered, and feeling like you just didn't measure up. It's that really painful gap between what we want to do and what we actually do.
Okay,
Let's paint a picture here, something straight from the book. Imagine you are about to moderate a huge online panel. We're talking months of prep work on the line. You race to your desk, you hop on the video call just in the nick of time, and then you see it. Your laptop battery is at 3%, and your charger is nowhere to be found. Ugh. It's that hard-stopping moment where one tiny forgotten detail can completely derail a massive effort. It's the feeling of constantly being tripped up by the small stuff.
And when that kind of thing happens over and over and over again, your brain starts asking some really harsh questions, doesn't it? Am I just lazy? Am I irresponsible? Why can't I just get my act together? And look, that line of thinking, it's a super fast train to shame and burnout. But here's the most important part. It is absolutely the wrong question to be asking.
The answer to all those questions is a very clear, very simple no. This is not a moral failing. It's not a failure of your character. It's a breakdown in logistics. It's not about your heart. It's about your head. Specifically, it's about the chemistry and the wiring in your prefrontal cortex. Let's think of it this way. It's a problem with your brain's CEO. So that CEO, that's your set of executive functions. You can think of them as the air traffic controller for your brain. They are the skills that let you plan your day, focus your attention where it needs to be, remember all the instructions you've been given, and somehow juggle all the moving parts of your life. Bottom line, they're the skills that turn an intention into an action.
And here's the thing you have to understand. Getting something done isn't just one thing. It's a really complex, multi-step process that a lot of brains just run on autopilot. As you see here, you have to start the task, then organize all the little steps, remember what the goal is the whole time, switch between different parts of it, and finally finish the job. It's kind of like a relay race happening inside your head.
But for a brain that's struggling with executive function, that relay race, well, the baton gets dropped a lot. Just think about those 5 minutes between classes in school. You have to stop taking notes, remember what the homework is, find your planner, navigate a super crowded hallway, remember your locker combination, and then grab the right books for the next class. That's not one task. That's like a dozen little tasks all at once. It's a huge executive load, and it's the perfect place for the whole system to just crack.
So if just doing it is about as possible as just growing taller, what's the real alternative? Right? If willpower isn't the answer, then what is? Well, the good news is there are real, practical strategies that have absolutely nothing to do with willpower.
See, the answer isn't to fire your brain's CEO or just yell at them to work harder. The answer is to give that CEO a better support team. And we call this scaffolding. It's all about building external systems that bridge the gaps where your internal management system tends to fall short.
All right, strategy number 1. This might be the single most powerful piece of scaffolding there is. Get everything out of your head. Seriously, your brain's working memory, it's kind of like the RAM on your computer. It's got limited space and it gets overloaded really easily. So trying to use it to store your to-do list, your schedule, and all those random reminders, it's like trying to run 50 different programs at once. The system is just bound to crash.
And this is where it gets super practical. To externalize something, you have to make your intentions visible in the real world. That means actual physical checklists that you can cross off. It might mean a sticky note on your computer with a doing list. And hey, maybe even a not doing list to keep you from getting distracted. It could even be a specific bracelet you only wear when the stove is on, or a launch pad right by the door. You know, that one sacred bowl where your keys, wallet, and phone always live. You're creating physical cues that your brain just can't ignore. Okay, our next strategy tackles something called initiation paralysis. And you know exactly what this is, right? It's that feeling of staring at a huge project and feeling so completely overwhelmed that you can't even figure out where to start. The trick is to stop trying to move the whole mountain and instead just focus on moving one single pebble.
This is all about the power of reframing. Clean the kitchen. That's so vague, it's overwhelming, but put one dish in the dishwasher? Anyone can do that. Write the report. That sounds huge, but open a new document and type the title. That's just a click and a few keystrokes. The whole goal is to shrink that first step until it's so tiny and so easy that your brain has no reason to resist it.
So this next strategy, it sounds a little bit like science fiction, I'll admit, but it is one of the most effective tools out there. What if, when your own brain is feeling all chaotic and scattered, you could literally just borrow the calm, focused part of someone else's?
Well, it turns out you kinda can. The technique is called body doubling, and it is surprisingly simple. All you do is have another person present while you work on something. They don't have to help you, they can just be in the same room, or even on a video call quietly doing their own thing.
For reasons that neuroscientists are still trying to figure out, just having their calm presence there acts like an external anchor for your own wandering attention, making it so much easier to stay on task. It's wild, but it works. You know, what all these strategies are really pointing to is a huge shift in our whole approach. For years, the default advice has always been about willpower. It tells you to just try harder, and then when you fail, it leads to shame and burnout. The new approach, the one that actually works, is about building systems. This isn't about trying harder, it's about trying differently. Systems provide reliable support, and they correctly place the blame on a broken process, not on a broken person.
If you only take one single thing away from all of this, let it be this. Systems beat willpower. Every single time. The solution is never to just grit your teeth and force it. It's about getting smarter, getting kinder to yourself, and getting more creative by designing a world around you that actually works with your brain, not against it. So, we'll leave you with this question, because this isn't just some interesting theory, it's a practical toolkit. Looking at everything we've talked about, from externalizing your lists to body doubling, what is one small piece of scaffolding, one little system you can build for yourself right now, today? What's that first tiny step you can take to stop fighting your brain and start supporting it?
All right, let's talk about focus. Have you ever felt like it's not really something you control, but more like this wild animal you have to chase down and try to tame? Well, if that sounds familiar, you're in the right place. We're about to break down the science of focus and hyperfocus for brains that just happen to work a little bit differently.
Does this hit close to home? You can get completely lost in a video game for hours on end, no problem. But the second it's time to tackle that one boring but, important task, your brain just goes, nope, it feels totally impossible. So what is going on here? So what you're experiencing is a little thing called hyperfocus. And honestly, it's a paradox. It's this genuine double-edged sword. It can be your absolute greatest asset, but it can also create some pretty serious problems in your life.
And this duality, it's the whole key. See, on one hand, hyperfocus is a superpower. It lets you dive into that deep creative work, hit these incredible bursts of productivity, and master new skills like nobody's business. But on the other hand, it's a real problem. You can get so sucked in, you forget to eat, you completely lose track of time, and you end up ignoring important tasks and even the people you love. And you don't even mean to.
I absolutely love this quote from Jessica McCabe. She calls it the focus beast. And this just reframes the whole thing, doesn't it? It's not some character flaw or you just not having enough willpower. No, it's this powerful separate thing that you're trying to work with. It's not something you do, it's something you're trying to capture and aim in the right direction.
So, if focus is a beast, what's actually happening up there in the brain? What fuels this thing? Let's get into the science of it all.
And listen, this is probably the most important thing you're going to hear today. Your brain is not broken. It's not failing. It's just wired differently. It runs on what we call an interest-based attention system. So it's not motivated by what's important. It's motivated by what gives it a hit of dopamine. The brain's feel-good motivational chemical. It's always on the hunt for a very specific set of triggers.
And here they are. These are the 4 things that will reliably capture the focus beast: interest, novelty, challenge, and urgency. Okay, now think back to that video game. It hits every single one of these, right? It's interesting, it's constantly new, it's challenging, and it creates this built-in sense of urgency. It is a dopamine feast for your brain. That homework, though? Yeah, unless the deadline is in the next hour, it probably has none of these, which is exactly why your brain just slams on the brakes.
This quote from Andy Dwyer in Parks and Rec is hilarious, but it's also, surprisingly spot on. His brain is basically just asking for the engagement it needs to tune in. It's not that he doesn't want to listen, it's that he needs the info delivered in a way that can actually fuel his interest-driven attention system.
Okay, so now that we get the why, let's move on to the how. How do we consciously tame this focus beast and actually point it toward the things we need to do, even when they're not naturally super engaging? Let's get into some practical tools.
First up is a really simple but weirdly powerful tool called body doubling. And it's pretty much what it sounds like. You just have someone else in the room with you while you work. And they don't even have to help you. They can be working on their own stuff. Just their presence creates this gentle, low-key accountability that helps you stay on track. This can be a friend at the library or even a virtual study group online. It works.
Next up, use a timer. Now hang on, this isn't about creating some high-pressure race against the clock. It's actually the opposite. It's about making a deal with your brain. You're not committing to 3 hours of homework. That's way too overwhelming. You're just committing to work until the timer goes off in, say, 25 minutes. It makes the act of just starting feel so much smaller.
And here's some real-world perspective on that. Mike totally nails it. The biggest hurdle is just getting started, right? A timer breaks that barrier down. The thought, I can do almost anything for 25 minutes, is so much less scary than I have to finish this entire project.
So to recap, your toolkit for just getting started has 3 main tools. 1. Find a body double. 2. Set a timer to make starting feel way less daunting. And 3. Create a little ritual, a cue. This could be a specific playlist or even a certain drink. Anything that signals to your brain, okay, hey, it's focus time now.
But starting is only half the battle, isn't it? I mean, what about when the focus piece is totally locked on and you can't get it to stop? It's just as important to have tools to pull yourself out of that hyperfocus so you can, eat, sleep, or get to your next class on time.
When you're deep in the zone, a simple alarm on your phone might not even register. You often need something external, something physical, what we'll call tethers that can pull you back to reality and remind you there's a world outside your screen. Here's such a simple but brilliant example. Nikki uses a specific bracelet as a physical reminder for tasks like cooking. She already knows she's probably going to get distracted, so that physical feeling of the bracelet on her wrist acts as a tether, pulling her attention back to the stove. So clever! Okay, now one of the biggest reasons we fight stopping is that fear, right? The fear that we'll never be able to find that state of flow again. So the trick here is to make it super easy for your future self to get back on track. And you do this by leaving yourself breadcrumbs.
Before you step away, just take 30 seconds. That's it. Answer these 2 questions. First, what did I just finish doing? And second, what was the very next thing I was about to do? Writing this down creates this really clear path for you to follow when you come back, which makes restarting like 1,000 times easier.
Whew. Okay, we've covered a lot. What hyperfocus is, why your brain does it, and a whole toolbox of strategies to start managing it. So, where do you even begin?
So just look at these tools we talked about. Body doubling, timers, physical tethers, breadcrumbs. Don't try to master all of them at once. Just ask yourself, which one of these feels the easiest or maybe the most interesting to try right now?
And really, that's the final takeaway. Please don't try to change everything overnight. Taming the focus beast is a process. It's about learning to work with your brain, not constantly fight against it. The goal here isn't perfection, it's progress. So just pick one small tool, try it out today, and just see what happens. See what you discover.
Okay, so you've got the book, How to ADHD, or maybe you just got diagnosed. And it's a lot, right? It can feel pretty overwhelming. Like, where do you even start? Well, let's just walk through the beginning together. Because this book, it's not another thing for you to feel like you're getting wrong. It's actually a toolbox, one that's designed to work with your brain, not against it. This quote right here, this is where it all begins. It's from the author Jessica McCabe, and it just hits you, doesn't it? It gets right to the absolute heart of what so many of us with ADHD feel. That constant nagging sense that you're just not measuring up to some secret invisible standard, that you're always letting people down, and most of all, letting yourself down. And for the author, this wasn't just some passing thought. I mean, this book was basically born out of decades of her own personal struggle, a really frustrating journey of trying to do what seemed like the most basic things and just feeling like she was falling short again and again and again. And this is what that pattern looks like in real life. It's not usually one big dramatic failure. It's more like a constant, exhausting drip of all the little things slipping through your fingers. Forgetting your jacket at school, finding a glove box full of parking tickets you totally forgot about, apologizing all the time because you just assume whatever went wrong, it must have been your fault. Does any of that ring a bell? So after years and years of this cycle, she hit a wall. We're talking complete and total burnout. It's that awful, crushing moment when you realize that no matter how hard you try, no matter how much effort you pour into something, it's just not working. That whole strategy of just try harder, it had totally failed her. And that burnout led to this one question that literally changed everything. It's a pretty radical thought, especially when you've spent your entire life believing that your struggles are some kind of moral failing.
But what if? What if the problem isn't that you're not putting in enough effort? What if you're just using the wrong approach? Asking that one question was the turning point. It's what took her from burnout to a real breakthrough. She started diving into all the research and found out that ADHD wasn't just, being bad at focusing. No, it's a complex neurological thing that affects your executive functions, all that stuff like organizing, managing your emotions, and even your working memory. And this is such a huge perspective shift. Learning that her brain had actual impairments wasn't depressing at all. It was liberating. All of a sudden, there was a reason for her struggles that wasn't you're lazy or you're just not trying hard enough. And hey, if the problems were real, that meant that real, actual solutions had to exist too. And that is exactly what this book is. It's not another one of those self-help books filled with advice that sounds nice, but just doesn't work for an ADHD brain. It is that toolbox. It's the collection of all the real practical solutions she found, all the strategies and tools that actually help you work with your brain for a change. But here's the thing, right? A toolbox is only good if you can actually open it up and use the tools inside. And that's why it's not just the content of this book that matters, it's the design. It was built from the ground up, specifically to be ADHD friendly. First things first, Jessica lays out who she's talking to with two really simple terms. If you've got ADHD, you're a brain. And if you're a partner, a parent, a friend, someone who's trying to support a brain, you're a heart. It's great, because it immediately creates this sense of community, like we're all in this together. I mean, think about it. How many times have you picked up a book and just couldn't get through it? A huge wall of text? This book is different. Every single choice, from the font to the layout, was made intentionally to be like a bridge, to help you get over those common reading hurdles and actually get to the good stuff. So here's what that looks like. It's broken into short, digestible chapters. You get these really relatable stories, science that's actually easy to understand, and these awesome toolbox sections you can just flip to and use right away. There's tons of white space on the page so it doesn't feel cluttered. And honestly, the best part? You are actively encouraged to skip around. Seriously, this is not a novel you have to read from page 1 to the end. It's not a textbook you have to memorize. Jessica calls it brain holder's choice. You are in charge here. If a chapter feels too heavy right now, put it down. If another one doesn't seem relevant, just skip it. You literally cannot use this book the wrong way. So look, before you even read a single chapter, I just want you to lock these 3 things in your head, okay? Number 1, you are not failing. Your brain just works differently. Number 2, this book is a toolbox you can pick and choose from. It is not a rule book you have to follow perfectly. And number 3, the absolute best place for you to start is wherever looks interesting to you. That's it. So that's your only assignment. Forget about doing it right. Just flip through the book, find a page that catches your eye for whatever reason, and just start there. Your journey with this doesn't have to start with some huge commitment. It can start with just one single curious page turn.
Welcome to The Explainer. You know that feeling? When you were trying so hard, but you still feel like you're failing at, well, everything. Today, we're going to dig into that exact feeling, using some incredible insights from author Jessica McCabe. Let's get into it.
Okay, this quote right here, it just hits, doesn't it? Be yourself. No, not like that. It's like the perfect summary of the confusing signals we get from society. It's this feeling of always being just a little bit out of sync, no matter how you try to get it right. All right, so let's dive in. We're going to start with a story from McCabe's childhood that I have a feeling is going to sound really familiar to a lot of you, especially if you were the kid who was always told you had so much potential.
So this is the daily puzzle, right? You leave for school in the morning, hair is perfect, jacket's clean, you're the picture of the kid you're supposed to be. But then, you come home, and you look like, well, you. Hair's a mess, backpack's open, and where's that jacket? It's just gone. The whole day feels like a slow-motion fall from grace.
And this is the core of it all, this huge contradiction. You can be amazing at the big stuff, but completely fail at the small stuff. McCabe talks about how in 3rd grade, she was reading at a post-high school level. How incredible is that? But she couldn't keep her own shoes tied. And as an adult, that looks like being a total rock star at your job, but, forgetting to pay your electricity bill. It just makes no sense.
So, what do you do when you're stuck in that loop? Brilliant at one thing, a disaster at the next. Well, you do what anyone would do. You grab the only tools you think you have. And for a long, long time, that toolbox, it wasn't great.
In fact, it was pretty much empty except for two rusty old tools: apologize for everything and the classic just try harder. It's this idea that, if you just grit your teeth and push with all your might, you can fix whatever's wrong.
And this quote, wow, it's just so real it hurts. When you're constantly the one who's late or messy or forgot the thing, you start to believe it's just you. It's a character flaw. So every mistake feels like this huge moral failure that you have to say sorry for.
And where does that lead? After years and years of trying harder, apologizing for just existing, it leads right here. Total, absolute burnout. McCabe calls it her brain going on strike. And that's exactly what it feels like. You're just done. You can't anymore. Because everything you've been trying just isn't working.
Okay, but what if we've been looking at this all wrong? What if the problem was never about not trying hard enough? What if it was never, ever a character flaw?
This is where everything changes. What if the problem wasn't a bunch of separate failings? What if the messy room and being late and spending money you shouldn't? What if it was all connected? All symptoms of invisible hurdles inside the brain. Things connected to ADHD.
And a huge piece of this puzzle is something called executive function. The easiest way to think about it is like the CEO of your brain. It's the part that's supposed to plan things, organize your day, and stop you from doing impulsive stuff. But if that CEO is, let's say, a little overwhelmed or underdeveloped, then even the most basic tasks can feel like climbing Mount Everest. Okay, look at this. This is the perfect example. That 5-minute bell between classes, for most people it's just chaos they navigate automatically. But if your executive function is struggling, it's not one task, it's 6. Stop what you're doing, figure out what's next, find your planner, pack your bag, go to your locker, wait, what's the combo again? And grab what you need. Any one of those steps can be a tripwire that makes the whole thing fall apart. And realizing that, it changes everything. Suddenly, all those years of shame and thinking you're a bad person, it just gets reframed. It's not I'm lazy, it's my brain has trouble initiating tasks. It's not I'm a mess, it's my brain struggles with organization. It's a total mind-blowing revelation.
So, once you know what the real problem is, you can finally start looking for a real solution. A new path opens up. And the best part? This path has absolutely no room for shame, and try harder is not on the map.
And this is so important. Getting this new information feels amazing, like a huge weight is lifted. But it can also be really sad. You grieve for your past self. You think about that little kid who was trying so hard and just thought they were bad at everything, when really they were facing obstacles they couldn't even see.
This is the moment you get to throw out that old, useless toolbox. You can finally let go of those tools that never worked anyway, because trying harder is pointless when you're already giving it 110%. It's like trying to open a can with a hammer. You don't need more force, you need a different tool. And that's really what this is all about. This is your official permission slip. You can stop trying harder. Instead, you can start trying differently. The goal isn't to cram yourself into some normal box. The goal is to build a life with a brand new set of tools that actually fits you.
So let's leave it with this thought. What if it was never you? What if it was never about your effort or your character or your willpower? What if the problem was just your toolbox? Because asking yourself that question, that's the first step to building a life that actually works.
So, were you one of those kids who got diagnosed with ADD, handed a prescription, and that was pretty much it? Maybe you've gone through life thinking you just have a mild case, but at the same time, you're wondering, why do I feel like I'm failing at being an adult? Well, if that's you, you're in the right place. Let's get into it. In this quote from Jessica McCabe, author of How to ADHD, man, it just hits home, doesn't it? For so many of us, the diagnosis was all about not paying attention in school. And sure, the medication might have helped with that, but it didn't fix everything else. We had no clue that all these other things, the constant mess, the late fees, that awful feeling that you're always letting people down, were all part of the same thing. Okay, so let's just clear the air. The way most people think about attention deficit disorder is based on science that's like decades old. It's time to bust some myths and get into the reality of what we know about the ADHD brain today.
Right. This one is huge. It's probably the biggest misunderstanding out there. It's not that you have a deficit of attention. It's that you have a hard time regulating it. See, your brain has something called a default mode network. And in ADHD brains, it's way more active. Think of it like your brain's screensaver. It just kicks on way more easily, and suddenly your attention is off chasing something, anything, that's more interesting and will give you that little dopamine hit you're craving.
And that leads us right into the next giant myth. The struggle isn't just about focus, not even close. If you think ADHD is just a focus problem, you are missing like 90% of the picture. It's actually about a whole set of brain skills called executive functions. So what in the world are executive functions? Honestly, the best way to think about it is like this. They're the CEO of your brain. They're in charge of all the management stuff, remembering what you just read a second ago, organizing your thoughts to write an email, just starting that thing you really don't want to do, and even just switching between tasks. You know that 5-minute scramble to get your stuff together between classes? Yeah, that takes a ton of executive function that a lot of ADHD brains are still developing.
Okay, and here's a big one, a really big one that gets missed all the time. Emotion dysregulation. Have you ever just exploded with anger over something tiny, or felt a wave of sadness so huge it completely knocked you out for the day? Listen to me. That is not a character flaw. It's a neurological symptom. Your brain literally has trouble putting the brakes on your emotional responses, so you feel things more intensely and for longer.
So we've all been told to just try harder, right? And we all know that's a joke. It doesn't work. So what does? Well, the modern approach isn't about trying to brute force your brain into being something it's not. It's about building a toolbox of strategies that actually work with your brain's unique wiring.
Here's the thing, there's no single magic bullet. The best approach, the one that really works, is what experts call multimodal. Big studies, like the MTA study, have shown that while medication can be a total game changer, the best results happen when you combine it with other stuff. Things like skills training, therapy, and coaching to build real-world strategies. And honestly, community support, finding other people who just get it, is absolutely massive. It's not about one fix, it's about building a whole support system.
And this is a perfect example of what that looks like in real life. This is genius. Triana isn't trying to rely on her own brain's internal reminder system, because she knows it's kind of spotty. Instead, she's using technology to give her a physical cue, a little tap on the wrist, that's basically impossible to ignore. It's all about building external scaffolding to support your brain where it needs it.
But hey, it doesn't have to be some fancy smartwatch. This is one of my absolute favorite low-tech tools. You just take 2 sticky notes. On one, you write doing, and on the other, not doing. You stick them where you can see them while you work. It's this simple, constant visual reminder that helps you catch yourself when you've drifted off and gently pull your focus back. So simple, but wow, it works. Now, all these challenges, they aren't just frustrating, are they? They have real, tangible costs. It's something that people have started calling the ADHD tax, and it's the very real price you pay for these symptoms in your day-to-day life.
So, does any of this look painfully familiar? That late fee on a bill you just plain forgot about. The extra cash for rush shipping because, oops, you missed another deadline. That gym membership you paid for 6 months without realizing it. Buying a new pair of keys, again. This isn't just being bad with money. It's the ADHD tax, and it absolutely adds up, draining your bank account, your time, and your sanity.
And you know, even worse than the financial tax is the emotional one. For our whole lives, people with ADHD hear things like this. We're told we're too sensitive, that our feelings are an overreaction. And that stigma, it teaches us to hide how much we're struggling. It makes us blame ourselves and believe that there's something just wrong with us, when the truth is, we're dealing with a neurological condition. Okay, so after all of that, what's the point? Where do we go from here? The whole goal has to shift. It can't be about fighting this constant, exhausting battle against your own brain. It has to become about finally understanding how your brain actually works and then learning to work with it.
And Jessica McCabe puts it perfectly here. This is honestly so powerful. We spend so much of our lives trying to use the same strategies as everyone else, the neurotypical advice that just doesn't work for our brains. And then we beat ourselves up when we fail. The real change happens when you stop worrying about how things should work and you start paying attention to what actually works for you.
And that really brings us to the final and maybe the most important shift in thinking. For so long, the story about ADHD has been about fixing a deficit so you can finally reach your potential. But what if that's the wrong question? Once you understand your brain, you can stop chasing some ideal of who you're supposed to be, and you can start asking a much better question. How do I build a great life? A life that I love, as the awesome person I already am.